Thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. José Cavazos. I'm the Assistant Dean for the Physician Scientist Training Program at the UT Health San Antonio. This is the Long School of Medicine and the Graduate School. Today I'm doing another webinar, and this time it's about the actual content of virtual interviews. We call it part two of the interviews. The part one was the introductions and the preparation getting you to the interview. We and others might be providing you some sort of standardized background for equity and inclusiveness, which is, very likely something like what is behind me. Which is a Zoom background that is standardized so that we can focus on you. So I'm here today as the director of the MD-PhD program here in San Antonio, but I am speaking. But I'm also the chair-elect of the AAMC MD-PhD section and the Association for MD-PhD programs. In fact, in 7 weeks, I become the chair of this group, and I'm really interested in providing an environment that is, that fosters equality and inclusivity of all commerce, of everybody in our difficult times for COVID-19, the pandemic, etc. So this is my program, and this is from our retreat. Just to give you an idea, we are a very inclusive and diverse program where everybody is welcome. And the purpose of this webinar series is to provide you with information about the upcoming admission cycle, particularly in these circumstances of the pandemic associated with COVID-19, which have affected every one of us in one way or another. I personally have lost some relatives with this unfortunate condition, and other people have been disrupted in their career plans, in taking exams and the like. And so what the purpose of these webinars is to support transparency, try to lower your anxiety and stress. And we do have a series of webinars uploaded in YouTube, and they are publicly available. And for the most part, they try to be non-branded. I mean, we are trying to do this as a service to the entire community. So you will get a link, or it's going to be placed in the chat box, but you can get also a link of the prior webinars. And if you need consultations and have not yet applied, we're happy to talk to you on a one-to-one basis. If you contact us via the email of the program. Now, for today's webinar, please submit your questions in the chat box or unmute and ask live, given the fact that it is a small group. Now, I have about 30 minutes, 25 minutes or so of content to discuss, and the rest is going to be questions and answers. And so, you can, if you're thinking already about a question, just write it. We will just reply to you in a few minutes in the live box as I present my, the material that I have. So what is it that we are going to be doing here? What we're going to be doing is to talk about the mechanics of a virtual interview. I personally have done virtual interviews of applicants of different perspectives, of different types, but in the end, they are all about trying to understand who are you, trying to communicate your science and your goals, okay? Trying to handle all the multitasking that is around us. Okay, my dog is barking. There might be some children in the background. There might be some noise. You might not be able to control everything. But what is most important is to communicate your science and your goals and to be truly authentic, okay? To have authenticity. Now, there is also some style component that has to do with the way you are being seen and you want to be seen, and the environment as to whether this is a passive versus an active interview process. And we're going to be talking about these things, and we will be also answering questions about the Vita, for example, AAMC Vita and other things as far as we can do. Okay, so let's talk about communicating your science and your goals. Before you interview, okay, the night before you are talking to every program, you need to do preparation. And that preparation is trying to understand that you are interviewing in University of the North Pole, and if every single thing that you say is about the South Pole, they will realize that you did not prepare. Okay, so that's the first piece. Second piece is read again your application. Anything that is in your application is fair game. Okay, so if you discuss an issue of a disability in the application, we can ask about it. If on the other hand, you are being seen as somebody who has a disability, but you had not discussed or communicated that to us, we cannot ask you about that. Okay, we may ask you some indirect questions that may lead you to disclose or discuss that. But it is up to you to be able to, discuss and drive the interview. Now, the key aspect about what we as MD-PhD program directors and administrators and admissions committees are looking for is we're looking for physician scientists. It includes two words, physician and scientist. Okay, so we do need to have some answers to physician and some answers to scientists. Now, for the majority of us, what we are going to try to understand is what is your goal to communicate it to and talk about your science. Okay, so to us, it's almost everything is about tell me about your science. Once you have the academic benchmarks that are sufficient to be an interview, it's not about the benchmarks. It's about who you are and whether you can earn a spot. So first of all, from a confidence boost, if you are getting interviews, kudos to you. You are attractive. You are an attractive candidate. We are in the business of selling ideas. And these ideas are going to be about my science and my goals to the NIH, to the peer review system, to the study section, to my boss, to the the faculty, to the peer, to the public. So it's important to have communication skills. And I'm actually an introvert. So if you need to work on this, do that. So you are able to become an extroverted and able, at least on face, to be able to bring those attributes about your science, about the enthusiasm on your career, and all of that into the interview. So it's very critical for you to be talking about your research and how your research fits in the overall aspect of medicine. It is okay if you did just plant biology. What you need to say is, I'm interested in tumor immunology. I didn't have opportunities to perform that type of research in my institution. And so I'm interested in that because it cures people with cancer. So as you can see, there is always a relationship between physician and scientist. And that's part of the reason why shadowing physician scientists is the most important aspect. Now, we are in the business of hiring and finding people who are future physician scientists. So we want to understand your science from the perspective of the scientific process. And the scientific process has one key big piece. And you start with, this is important because it's for cancer, or Alzheimer's is a large disease. There is this, couple of proteins, tau and the plaques that are important. There is this gap of knowledge, and there is a hypothesis. Okay, to address this hypothesis, I did these experiments. And this experiment, what we want to see with this conversation is whether the wheels are clicking, whether the wheels are moving inside your head. Are you thinking as a scientist, as one of us? Okay, you are becoming one of us, one of our guild. And so because of that, we really need to have you be able to utter the words hypothesis, but use it in the proper context and talk about how you learn and test your hypothesis. Even if it is a hypothesis in plant biology, chemistry, translational science and the like. Now, emphasize what are your goals to the future. In what we typically ask, and I'm giving you some ideas, some hints, is what has been your journey from, being born to the present time, sitting in that chair, sitting in that side of the camera, in 3 minutes or less, okay? So try to work already some points, have some post-its, but don't be reading because I can see that reading, etc. That's not the point. The point is that it is an authentic discussion. But that's one part of the journey. The other part of the journey is what is it going to happen to you from finishing this program and moving on 20, 30 years down the road. What have you accomplished? What are you aiming to be? Do you have some idea? It doesn't need to be necessarily, I want to be a pediatric hematologist understanding the leukemia, signaling process, etc., etc. That's not the level what we want. What we want to understand is what kind of impact do you want to have. And so if you want to become a pediatric hematologist or pediatric oncologist and help leukemia cancer, and I want to take care of children with this condition, but get the inspiration from that care and bring those gems into the lab so that I can do better animal models, more important questions. What are the toxicity issues? So one of our mentors, for example, in pediatric oncology, noticed that people with these problems had some problems with toxicity in the heart. So one of the components that he does is why these chemotherapy agents that are so good to cure these leukemias are really causing these long-term susceptibilities of long-term aging processes in the heart. And it has to do with mitochondria and how the mitochondria have been, stressed out, and some oxidative stress and blah, blah, blah. And so he has built a career on those areas. Now, you don't have to go to that level, but what you need to say is, I want to continue a study of the signaling processes of cancer. And I don't know yet if I'm going to be a urologist taking care of prostate cancer, or a pathologist diagnosing prostate cancer, or a radiologist imaging prostate cancer, or an oncologist giving chemotherapy for prostate cancer. Bottom line is what you want to be is a physician trying to care for people with cancer, but it's just enough to understand the pathophysiology, the biology, and bringing that information to study and change the way we care for people with cancer or Alzheimer's or diabetes or neuroscience, or in my case, epilepsy. So these are the things that we want to hear. Now, in our case, we have a process called the chalk talk. And so this is a little bit more expanded version of the 3-minute question that people do when they are asking you, tell me about your research. So the 3 big questions that they are going to ask you in interview is, tell me about your journal from home to the interview. Tell me about your journey from finishing this program to your future. What are you aiming for? And the other one is, tell me about your research. Now, other questions that are common is, tell me about the resilient process, time that you overcame some obstacles. Tell me about X, Y, or Z. And then there's always the chit chat that somebody realized that you speak Japanese, or that you went to Korea, or you were in India, or X, Y, or Z. And you know what? I happen to have a relative who did that journey, and or took those photos, or play that that instrument, or practice that sport. So there always are some extra things that you might be surprised, and that's the reason why it's important to connect the dots. For example, I asked to an individual who claimed to be to have to have done a very interesting trip that was very nicely described in their application, and I just happened to had reservations. I mean, I did not go to that particular city, and so I spontaneously asked a question, not completely well phrased, with the specific location, and didn't get it. And so when I started asking, I realized that they may have been going into this trip, but this guy didn't register anything about this particular city, because many of the things that I was planning to go and see, they just were not even in the radar. So that's an important aspect in terms to the next question of authenticity. So in our case, what we do is a chalk talk. And the chalk talk is a little longer version, 7 minutes with 3 to 5 minutes of mostly 3 minutes of discussion. And in our case, it's going to be followed by a panel interview. So in a sense, all the people who are going to be in the panel, you already are seeing them. And it is kind of like a 30-minute chunk. But the chalk talk specifically should follow a particular kind of system, which is, again, you start big, start big, and you go like a funnel to a gap of knowledge, have a hypothesis that addresses that gap of knowledge, and then this is the experimental design, focusing on controls, focusing again in thinking scientifically, and this is the results. You are able to show one figure or distribute one figure prior to beginning the presentation, but it is only one figure, and you are not going to be using it. You could have a board. Typically, we use it, a whiteboard if you want to have that. But it is really to describe what the science is and what you learn out of this process. We're not interested in hiring a technician. So we're not interested in you describing us to, the specific techniques. So that's what the chalk talk is. And we do include 2 students in our admission committee, and these are students who have, endured this process, and so it's part of the, of the process, and they are also learning. So what is important now to you in the training program? You need to.
Will you clarify whether Chalk Talks happen at other institutional interviews as well, or is this just significant to ours?
Correct. Thank you for asking that question. I gave this presentation about the Chalk Talk and the benefits of a Chalk Talk to the National Association of Programs in 2017. I believe there are about 10 programs in the nation that are using a Chalk Talk. I do memorize, but a 3-minute spiel about your research. You can expand for another 3 more minutes, okay? If there is a particular question. So these two, that's one of the things that it's very important. This is a way for you to control the interview, by the way, by knowing the answers to those 4 questions that I asked you. So, or 5 questions now. So to know about your journey from home to sitting in that chair, to know an answer that is kind of with some particular elements to the future, an answer about your research, specifically focusing on hypothesis. If you have multiple experiences, you can say, I have multiple experiences. This is an example of a representative experience that I have had. I will be happy to tell you about others in subsequent presentations or subsequent questions. Now, there is a question that I got from a student that has to do with what if I have things that are protected by intellectual property. And so what you say is, I was working with these antibodies in this particular research company with this particular kind of doctor addressing concerns in prostate cancer or some kind of cancer. You can be very broad. I am not at liberty to tell you specifically of some of these things. Having said that, while I was an undergrad at my institution, I hope so. Now, what is important to you in a training program? Have a list of questions, because they are going to ask you questions to the faculty, questions to the students. Now, keep in mind that these questions, that every single piece of the interview is an interview, okay? So don't be asking questions about, for example, I don't want to be discriminated, or you might actually phrase them in a different point of view. You may want to ask you, can you tell me more about the diversity efforts of the institution? Okay, and then to the students, you can ask them in a positive way, do you feel wanted in the institution? Do you feel that the institution value you? As a student, I mean, this is a very neutral question, but if you are asking that to a person of color, we know certain kinds of things. And obviously, my institution is a diverse institution, is actually the only minority serving institution in the nation with an MSTP. So clearly there are some particular benefits, but that's, as you can tell, phrasing the question is very important, because every single piece is an interview. Okay, let me move on because time is moving fast. Multitasking. You need to cancel other activities. And so you might be interviewing from, let's say, 9 to 11, and then you have two breaks. You can catch up with your phone. You can catch up with, so get your phone in mute, not completely off, because you might need to have, particularly with technology challenges, you need to have communication with the person, in this case, Jennifer, or the administrator, MD-PhD administrator. Cancel all activities. Do not have multiple sessions going in the background. I mean, this is try to restart your process try to, if they offer you the possibility of a technology check prior to start the interview, take advantage of that. Make sure that your camera and microphone, that you don't have interference and the like. Make sure that you have, give me 1 second, for a prop, this available. It's okay to have. This is not because you're a video gamer. I mean, yes, I am a video gamer myself, but this is require technology to have available, because that takes away some of the feedback loop things. So invest in a $25, $30, headset that is USB and the like. Make sure that your computer works. Now, the other aspect is, it will perhaps appear that you don't care enough about that particular interview. This particular interview must feel to you as my dream school. Okay, another point, look at the camera. Know where the camera is. Now, you can tell that I use my hands. That accentuates. Now, some people may just keep the hands down. It's okay. I look particularly for passionate people, because that's the way I am. I mean, I'm very passionate to be a physician scientist and mentor the next generation of physician scientists. But no, some people, they are much more quiet. It's okay to be yourself. This is about authenticity. But overall, look like you are one of them. So for this, you shouldn't be wearing just underwear or something like that, and a nice shirt, because if you, for whatever reason, the camera fall or something like that happens, it can be a mess. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to be wearing shoes. I am not wearing shoes right now myself. I'm with socks, but I'm actually fully dressed with belt and everything else, my tie. I could have been using my coat. But this is who we are. We want you to look and take us seriously. So if you have a professional suit, that's awesome. That's beautiful. Now, if you cannot afford, try to rent it for one day. Honestly, it's important. This is a job interview, essentially. We have here $500,000. That's what I have. That's what each of my students cost me. Okay, $500,000. Are you willing to go and get them? Are you going to be staying in the path? Are you deserving this $500,000? In some institutions can be as high as $1 million every student. So you really need to take this very seriously. Now, you don't need to, you can use the same suit, the same shirt, the same tie, every single interview. It's okay. The same business suit, it's okay. So make sure that you are not spilling. As some of you may have seen in the beginning, I do have something here. It's a power drink. It's what I do when I do certain things during the day. It's okay. You don't want to be caught with drinking beer, drinking wine, or anything else. I mean, and this may be better and more neutral to have a glass of wine, of water next to you. If you want, because you don't know what is the makeup of the person who is interviewing, you wanna fit. We all get implicit bias training. Even though that we get implicit bias training, we're human beings and we have implicit biases. We try to compensate for each of them. I try, and my job is to be the advocate for each of the applicants, each of my students, And if I am the advocate for my students, the program will be well taken care of. Now, authenticity. Small talk is okay. Try to learn about the people who you are, talking to. Um, Try to be present in the conversation. It's a conversation. Try to silence distractions. It's tough sometimes. I mean, the dog was barking earlier, etc. Now, camera. Notice the kind of three-quarters view that I have. It's about, a little, it says face should be 2.5 to 3 feet. Well, that's probably not. This is 3 feet, okay, from this camera. That's probably not good. And certainly this is too far away. You need to be at eye level. I'm actually standing. I have a nice rack, a rack that I have my computer sitting, and my computer, used to have has a camera at the very bottom of the screen, and that would be too low. So I had to buy a camera, high definition camera, that is 1080p, and it is at eye level. And so I put it up there, I make sure that it works, and I practice a few times. The idea here is to see you so that we can see and react and just be mindful that people are watching you. And so if you get upset or by a question or something like that, try to redirect the question or ask them to rephrase the question, which allows you a little bit more time to, kind of make a limp to the next. Next slide. Passive versus active. Understand what the program is. Do your homework about the program. Do not come do not come to the interview empty-handed, knowing very little and trying to get educated about that particular program. It's easy to sit back in the comfort of your home or your apartment, etc. But the idea here is to be engaging, and people who engage are more likely, particularly when they engage with our students, and our students say, hey, this person was really good, really cool. We actually look over the application again of that particular person, because we want to make sure that we find a good fit for our program. So be engaged, but don't be too overwhelmingly engaged, meaning, be excited, but know your own value. Each of you has strengths. Each of you has some weaknesses. Don't necessarily have to be talking to the weaknesses. Try to highlight the strengths. You made it to the interview process. It's not just given to you to fit a quota or anything of that sort. The reason why you are interviewing is because you belong. Just to give you some statistics, 92%, and in fact this year is not complete, but it seems to be probably 95, but in prior years it's 92.5% of all of our interviewees, they receive at least an acceptance in AMCAS. Okay, so that tells you that we are really good at picking people that are, legitimate people as physician scientists. So if we are inviting you, we truly believe that you belong, that you deserve to be there in that particular chair. But this is a two-way street. So we want you to be as excited as we are with you. And so it's important to show that. So now, how often do you need to send emails and the like? try to do it within a week if you want that, to do a thank you note to a particular person. But we do know it's very common. It's very common among many students to be sending this kind of plain, and you can see many of them are just plain thank you letters. But if there was a particular thing that really taught you from the interview, say so. I really enjoy discussing with you, the benefits of wellness in your program, or the particular strengths in cancer biology in your program. And I had the opportunity of talking with some students who are in that particular PhD, or I would like to have some opportunity to discuss with some students in that particular program, because unfortunately I was not able to relate to any of them. It is a thoughtful request, okay? So those kinds of things are reasonable follow-ups. Now, important follow-ups that you can do is thank you for interviewing, to particularly the staff of the programs, as well as to the program director. But if there are major updates, if you just publish a paper, if you have, so save them and send them periodically. Now, tend to space them at least 6 to 8 weeks from each other. You don't want to be a pest, sending repeated emails. But being active interviewee is very different to sitting there and just listening. Hey, this may be a good place, blah, 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 but I'm not very excited. And, we catch on that. And to be honest, that's a negative. And we have declined candidates who have been or not given acceptance to candidates who are terrific otherwise, but just didn't even bother to do the preparation to know about our program. So be engaged, be knowledgeable, be knowledgeable about yourself, of what you have done, and try to know about a few people in the institution, particularly in your area of interest. So, that will be always helpful. Now, we're going to have an open question. Welcome, admissions, anything is fair game. So I'm happy to take any questions from anybody. You can unmute or go ahead, Jennifer.
So one student asked if you could please clarify what separates a competitive applicant from an outstanding applicant. And this is kind of like in an application, but also in an interview setting.
Okay, so we read the applications, but we're humans. We have grants, papers, other kinds of things. I very often have read the application or the application of the individuals 3 or 4 times, but it may have been a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and I'm just reading the application, so I may need to refresh my head. But I have this idea here in the back, and I may ask you, didn't you do any kayaking or some? What are your hobbies? And I may ask you some things like that to see those things. Now, what is it that I read that really pulls me? Is stories. And this is very human. We do like stories. And reading about your journey as a story, particularly if it is a compelling story, that even if you had a terrible freshman, or fill the gaps, but I was able to be tested and resilient and succeed. So I do a lot of outreach. I meet with a lot of people throughout the years in many of the locations, SACNAS, ABRICAMS, NIH. I go to many places to advertise not only our program, but also to do, a goodwill, development of our profession. And so I do a lot of activities that have to do with reaching out. And if I have met you somewhere, let me know that, and we can have a conversation about the location and the time and what I remember. I know, for example, at least a couple of you have been, I have seen them. I have seen you at some point, or have mentored you at some point, or you have been in my office, or I have seen you somewhere at NIH. So what is outstanding? A story, a compelling story. Now, you are not everybody. I mean, you may think that your story is vanilla. It's not. Everybody has a genuine, authentic story. I want to hear that. And there are some people who are more able to communicate their passion to become physician scientists and their passion for research than others. Great numbers, it's easy, real easy to accept people with high numbers. But, we actually do a holistic review. We overcome, we actually sometimes pass over individuals. Last year, the number one person that applied in terms of a MCAT and GPA combined in a formula, we did not invite, because this individual didn't have in their statement sufficient research opportunities or sufficient research discussion to know about that this person was really committed to the pathway. It's interesting, that person ended up in an MD program at the very end of the process. So it's, just because you have high numbers doesn't mean that you belong in an MD-PhD program. It is a lot about the research. So there is a question from Isabel Bergman in the chat that says, what opportunities are there for students in the MSDPs to present their research and learn more about their field? Well, there is actually, Isabel, a national MD-PhD conference. It's not that expensive, and there is a diversity for low socioeconomic status, as well as URMs, fellowship that makes it completely free. It's virtual this year, and you can submit an abstract to that, and you are going to be able to interact with over 1,000 students from across the nation, and quite a few of our students. We want our students to present and attend conferences. When I was a graduate student, I attended a transformative conference. I wrote an essay, and back in the day, I was selected out of 10 people in the US, and was shipped to Italy for a summer. And we had Nobel laureates, we had all kinds of individuals up there, and it was incredibly transformative for me. It was an opportunity that I wish to be able to provide in some way or fashion to each of our trainees. So, for example, when our trainees are writing their F grants, I really lobby to include small conferences, small courses like Gordon conferences, or Cold Spring Harbor course or Marine Woods Hall or something along a Keystone Conference, that it is relatively small, but it's really likely to be transformative because it allows you to interact with less than 100 people and typically interact with people quite often one-to-one, and you're dealing with the leaders in your field. And these are sponsoring opportunities for you to really make the next jump. This is partly why we actually get a lot of our students to get into really terrific residencies.
Dr. Cavazos,
Another question.
Before you do that
Yes.
one, I've had several questions about our MD-PhD program and asking you to talk a little bit about what makes us unique as specifically to our program. And also if you could talk about what are the disadvantages of pursuing an MD-PhD program.
The only disadvantage of an MD-PhD program is that it takes 7 to 9 years. But if you put that into the equation that the age to first R01 is the same for MDs and MD-PhDs, you realize that those people are going to need to learn and earn their stripes to eventually be able to do the same level of research, and they pay for medical school. So to be honest, it's the best way. If you already know that you want to be a physician and you want to be a scientist, okay, and you want to combine the two, the best way to do this is through an MD-PhD program, because we pay for the program, we pay for your tuition, and we give you a stipend of $30,000 for the 7 to 9 years, okay? Now, once you finish that, you're gonna become a resident and earn about $60,000 or so for 4 to 6 years, and then you're gonna be making $150,000 to $250,000 depending upon the specialty. The rest of your life, you are doing what you love. It's incredible that people pay me and have paid me for all of this time to do what I love. I love to do research. I love to do career development. So here is the piece. You are forgiving the idea that of going into private practice. That's the point, okay? We are paying for your education. There are NIH funding to pay for your college loans, and there are different ways to do that. So the point is, your needs are taken care of for the rest of your life if you want to do this. And you're going to have a very comfortable life doing what you love. Keep in mind, I am a single income in my family, and I raised 2 kids that went to private colleges, and they are both professionals doing all things. So you can have it all if that's what you want. Our program has terrific outcomes of residency, better than some of the top 20 programs in the nation. And I'm not kidding about that. I am in a study section. I can see and show why our students do as well as they are. We have right now people at Harvard, Hopkins, Yale, NYU, Stanford, UCLA, Cornell, you name it, all over the nation, Washington University, etc. Okay, so we have a terrific program. San Antonio, Texas has a lot of good locations. I have to tell you that, but our program is very unique. 40% of our students own property. A quarter of our students have children. It is a very low cost of living. You know, $36,000 in New York City doesn't get you very far. $30,000 in San Antonio get you very far. Jennifer, what other question you have?
One's in the chat box. In presenting one out of many research projects, does it matter how long ago such project was done? For example, is it okay to discuss research where you had more autonomy, even though it was years ago, versus discussing a more recent project that had less autonomy?
Absolutely, that's a very thoughtful question. And yes, having autonomy, showing that you are the leader pushing a project is quite helpful. Now, hopefully that wasn't a high school experience. Hopefully it's an experience that you did during college. If you do that, that's great. You know, you choose which experience you want to discuss, but that is an experience that you can talk about because of your autonomy. Having said that, a question that is legit that may be asked to you is why you did not have then autonomy in these other labs if you have a series of other experiences. So just be prepared to answer that question. What are some realities of MD-PhD programs and physician scientist path? What would you say most applicants do not realize? You know, it is a long path. You know, most of you do not understand yet or do not know, and it is normal, what kind of residency you want to path you're going to have. Well, that's partly why you come to a program. We're not seeing you as a finished product. Having said that, if all of your experiences have been in neuroscience and you are talking about becoming a microbiologist, just wait until you get into medical school and do the shift, okay? It probably be best to sell yourself as a neuroscientist, even if you're going to do your first rotation in a micro/brain location. So it's okay. I mean, if you already discussed that in your essay, then talk about it with conviction. I have realized as I'm doing this that I am very interested in the interface between the science that I was doing, and this is my journey, and going into this other field. And I just haven't had those experiences because of COVID. And that's okay. That's a legit way to present yourself. So a follow-up of that, to go off the comment about selling yourself as a neuroscientist, even if you want to change fields, does that still apply if you are staying within the field but want to pivot? You know, and the case is oncology to tumor immunology or immuno-oncology. It's easier. It is easier to say, I have been studying signaling processes, but I have come across the powerful tools of tumor immunology. So it's an easier lapse, and so it might be okay to do those kinds of directional change. But let's say that you have been a chemist, a protein, so you're interested in Alzheimer's and you have been doing only behavior, and now you want to do protein structure, protein interactions, you know, that's a little harder, you know, sell. But nevertheless, if you already are really deeply committed to that change, be authentic, discuss it. If you're really authentic to the change from micro to neuroscience or from neuroscience to micro, try to put the two in the interface and sell yourself for that inner phase, okay? Rather than selling to the complete switch to becoming an immunologist, for example, in the case of oncology to immuno-oncology. Hopefully I answered your question. Okay. You saw a post saying that, first of all, I am fencer. So yeah, you may have seen me a few times, Colin. Yes, I work very hard because I work doing things that I love. But when you do them by love, it's not a second nature. The ACGME has a limit of 80 hours. When I went to school, those things didn't exist. So I was doing 120 hours of residency. That's too much. I do focus on my wellness, and I know when I have done enough. Having said that, physician scientists typically work somewhere in the range of 60 hours to 70 hours a week. It is the truth. It's a committed pathway to be able to do all of these things. Having said that, I coach my kids in college, in high school and in sports during elementary, but then I took them and gave them to my wife, and I put myself to work in the computer from 8 p.m. to midnight or the like. So yes, indeed, we still are able to have families, hobbies, and lives outside of the medical center, but you need to balance all of these things. I'm very passionate about what I do. Now, you can make a terrific life with 60 hours a week, having a family, having a spouse, and having other things. It's possible to do work-life balance. Having said that, you need to work very hard to make sure that you pay yourself. And that means paying myself means I need to write my manuscripts, then I'm going to do this. I'm going to be late for that meeting. So you need to prioritize things. We give you training in the MSTP about how to accomplish this. It is true. It's unfortunately a reality, but you can make it. And, we have 52% of our students one given year were women. Right now, I think that we're at 48. So it tells you that we are able to provide you an environment that is more willing to have this work-life balance, and we still get students in 7.9 years with 4.7 publications. So we can do it all, but you need to learn the skill set to succeed. Otherwise, you are gonna fail. It's the truth. I'm sorry. This is a very Darwinian society. It's a very Darwinian profession. It is. Any lasting question? Be authentic. That buys you a lot in the interview. And I hope that this is helpful. It's going to be recorded, and you're going to receive a link to this webinar. And I wish you the best of luck to each of you while interviewing and finding, and I hope that you consider our program as one of your choices. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.